FitzPatrick here with a special edition of the Cheap Seats. We're without Jed Blackwell this week. Jed's kind of waiting in between Spartanburg and Columbia for a ruling about the 2A wrestling playoffs. It may happen tonight, it may not. With me this week is Matt Burdick and Krista Gibson. Krista, part of what I think Jed's dealing with today is the fact that a lot of times the high school league and the counties are taking things out of the kids' hands. Today it was about wanting to make sure that the right team was wrestling, but I did a column this week talking about that these districts and the high school league doesn't always do what's best for the kids. Do you think I'm onto something, or do you agree with it that it's kind of trying to do what's politically correct maybe instead of what's best for the kids?
I think sometimes, especially when you get to the playoff segment, that there ought to be a little more leeway and letting the kids decide the outcome of a game, whether it's basketball, wrestling, and I know wrestling can be maybe a little more subjective. Basketball with fouls and things called. I know they want to set a tone that they're in charge, the officials, but I think you should let them go ahead and play their game and do all they can to make the outcome be who's the better team tonight.
I agree. I was talking to Carlton Green, the Greer High girls basketball coach, after his team was eliminated from the playoffs Tuesday, and they had played Monday night, played against Chapman. They didn't have to travel. They were playing Chester. Chester had to travel, so a little bit of maybe tired out from traveling, but they didn't play the night before. I think you're out of high school a little bit more recent than Krista and I are. As an athlete, do you think about it? Is it in your mind like, oh, I just played last night, and is there the element of kind of you've already been defeated, or do you even think about it?
I would say probably not. I think that at that point, I know that when I was in high school, there would be games where we would play with a short rest, and it didn't really seem to bother me that we lost or anything like that. I mean, I was kind of used to losing. My team wasn't all that great, but there were a lot of games where we did lose, and then we would bounce back probably better on a short notice because we'd have that loss fresh in our minds probably. It was kind of motivation, I'd say. So I'd say no.
I think maybe they could use that as an excuse maybe later,
right,
after the fact, but when you're that age, it seems to me adrenaline plays a much bigger role in how you perform than whether you're tired.
You may have a good point, because I stuck around for the boys' game, the Greer boys that played the night before. They won, and when I said, were you tired at all? No, well, we're fine. So, it's towards the end of February now. That means we're getting into March, which means we're getting into the NCAA basketball tournament. I'm hearing a lot lately about them expanding the field. I know you're a huge basketball fan. Do you want to see 96 teams, or are you happy with 64? Or?
I'm happy with 64. I think maybe what they should do is, rather than expanding the NCAA field, put a restriction on expanding the Division I field, because they've got 350 teams or so now, and just a couple of years ago it was under 300. I mean, growing up I can remember it being in the 200s, and so I feel like it's kind of expanding out of control. You've got about 100-some teams that have no chance of ever making it. For example, I know one of the schools that's now in Division I is New Jersey Institute of Technology, which I never even heard of before they made the move to Division I. So I'd say I do like the 64-team field. I think 96 is 64 is a little strange, but it makes mathematical sense. 96 sort of does, but I don't think quite the same level. So I'd say stick with it.
I agree. What they're talking about is possibly giving like 8 or so teams the first round bye. The Kansas teams, Villanova, Syracuse don't have to play in the first round. That means you're going to have like a team like maybe from a few years ago, George Mason, that's going to play like a weaker team in the first round. And I think part of what makes the tournament great is you get to see these David versus Goliath first round matchups, and sometimes there's the upset. I think this may take away from that upset.
Yeah, but I would even be for going to 32. I don't like watching those blowout games. Yeah, you do have the opportunity of maybe a Davidson beating somebody big or a Wofford beating somebody big, but I just think it carries on for way too long.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing this may help is if you're gonna expand the field, get rid of the NIT.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just too much basketball to have to watch a 96-team tournament and the NIT, which I think unless you have a team in it or unless it gets to the finals, you really don't care about. So.
Well, I think you've got a lot of SIDs out there trying to spin the fact that, oh, but we're top seeds in the NIT. You wouldn't have to deal with that anymore. They don't have to spin anything. You're either in or you're out.
And a lot of teams also, that's their complaint, like, oh, we won the NIT, that proves to the committee that we should have been in the NCAA tournament. So you might take care of those qualms, but, and that's something to look into, I guess. Maybe if you do away the NIT, I might be supporting that, but I like the 64-team format. So
Yeah.
I'm personally going to stick with that.
But again, is that for the kids, or is that for we're going to make some more money and so have more games? Is it for the kids playing the game?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe that's an argument for next week. Join us then. Thank you.